The first thing I noticed was the sound of the front door closing. Soft. Careful. Like someone trying very hard not to wake anyone. My eyes snapped open. For a few seconds, I stayed still, listening to the darkness. The digital clock beside my bed glowed 1:17 a.m. in pale blue light. Daniel's side of the bed was empty. Cold. My stomach tightened. Daniel had never been the type to sneak out at night. In our 8 years of marriage, he was predictable in the best ways. Dinner at 7. Netflix by 9. Bed by 10:30. Weekend grocery trips. Sunday morning pancakes. But lately, something had been different. Late phone calls. Work meetings that ran past midnight. And that strange distant look in his eyes, like his mind was somewhere far away. At first I told myself I was imagining things. But now, standing alone in the silent bedroom, staring at the empty side of the bed, I felt something else. Fear. Or maybe instinct. I slipped out of bed and quietly walked to the window. Outside, through the rain-streaked glass, I saw the faint glow of headlights. Daniel's car was pulling away from the driveway. My heart started beating faster. Where was he going at this hour? And why didn't he tell me? For a long moment, I stood there arguing with myself. Don't be ridiculous. He probably just went to buy medicine or something. But another voice in my head whispered something darker. What if he didn't want you to know? Before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed my coat and keys. If Daniel was keeping a secret, I was about to find out what it was. The rain had turned the streets glossy and empty. I stayed 3 cars behind him, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had never followed anyone before. Every time he stopped at a traffic light, panic hit me. What if he looked in the mirror? What if he recognized my car? But Daniel seemed completely unaware. He drove across town. Past the quiet residential streets. Past the closed shopping centers. Then toward an area I barely recognized. My heart pounded. Where was he going? After nearly 20 minutes, his car turned into a narrow road lined with tall trees. At the end of the road stood a single building. Old. Dimly lit. And completely unexpected. A hospital. I slowed down and parked across the street. Daniel stepped out of the car and ran toward the entrance, shielding his head from the rain. He looked desperate. Confused, I waited a minute before following him. Inside, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and quiet exhaustion. A night nurse glanced at me as I entered. Daniel stood at the reception desk, speaking urgently to someone behind the counter. I hid behind a pillar, listening. I came as soon as I could, he said. His voice sounded strained. The nurse nodded. Room 214. Room 214? My chest tightened. Who was in room 214? Slowly, carefully, I walked down the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above me. My footsteps echoed too loudly. When I reached room 214, the door was slightly open. I looked inside. And what I saw made my world tilt. Daniel was sitting beside a hospital bed. Holding someone's hand. A young woman. Maybe 20 years old. She looked pale and fragile, her dark hair spread across the pillow, tubes connected to machines around her. And Daniel. Daniel looked like his heart was breaking. He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm here, Emily," he whispered. "Emily?" My stomach dropped. Who was Emily? And why had my husband been visiting her in secret? 1,000 terrible possibilities rushed through my mind. An affair. A hidden child. A secret life. I backed away from the door, my head spinning. For a moment, I considered walking in and confronting him, demanding answers. But something stopped me. Daniel leaned closer to the girl and spoke again. "You're going to be okay. I promise." His voice cracked. I had never heard him sound like that before. Not even when his father died. I left the hospital in a daze. The rain soaked through my coat as I stood beside my car. Emily. The name echoed in my head. I didn't sleep that night. When Daniel came home around 3 in the morning, I pretended to be asleep. He slid quietly into bed beside me. But I could feel the tension in his body. The distance. The secret between us. The next morning at breakfast, everything felt painfully normal. Daniel drank coffee. Read the news on his phone. Asked if I wanted eggs or toast. I stared at him across the table, trying to see if there was any sign of guilt. But his face revealed nothing. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Where were you last night?" He froze. Just for a second. Then he took a sip of coffee. "Work emergency." The lie came too quickly. My heart sank. "Oh," I said quietly. He didn't meet my eyes. And in that moment, I knew. Daniel was hiding something big. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the girl in the hospital. Emily. The way Daniel held her hand. The way he looked at her. It wasn't romantic. It was something else. Something deeper. Painful. The next day, curiosity turned into obsession. I needed answers. So I went back to the hospital. Walking through those hallways alone made my stomach twist with guilt. But I kept going. At the reception desk, I approached the same nurse. "Excuse me," I said carefully. "I'm looking for someone in room 214. The nurse glanced at the computer. "Emily Carter?" My pulse jumped. "Yes." "She's stable today," the nurse said. "Family visiting hours start at noon." Family. The word hit me like a hammer. Family? What family? I forced a small smile and walked away. When I reached the hallway outside room 214, I hesitated. Then I knocked gently. A weak voice answered. "Come in." The girl in the bed looked even more fragile in daylight. But when she saw me, her eyes widened slightly. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," I replied. For a moment we just looked at each other. Then she asked the question that made my blood run cold. "Are you Daniel's wife?" My breath caught. "How do you know that?" She smiled faintly. "Because he talks about you all the time." My confusion deepened. "What exactly is Daniel to you?" For a long moment, Emily studied my face. Then she took a slow breath. "He didn't tell you, did he?" "Tell me what?" Her eyes filled with sadness. "Daniel is my father." The room seemed to spin. "What?" "He doesn't know I know," she continued quietly. But I found the documents months ago. My heart pounded in my ears. This has to be a mistake. Emily shook her head gently. No. Then she told me everything. 20 years ago, before Daniel met me, he had a relationship with a woman named Laura. They were young, broke, and scared. When Laura got pregnant, Daniel panicked. He wasn't ready to be a father. He left. He never knew the baby was born. Laura raised Emily alone. Until 6 months ago. That was when Emily found Daniel's name in old records. She contacted him. And Daniel had been trying to make up for 20 years of absence. Visiting her every night. Paying her medical bills. Because Emily wasn't just sick. She was dying. A rare genetic disease. The doctors had given her less than a year. Tears streamed down my face as Emily finished speaking. He's trying so hard, she said softly. But he's terrified you'll hate him if you find out. My chest ached. Suddenly everything made sense. The late-night calls. The secret trips. The sadness in his eyes. He wasn't cheating. He was trying to save a daughter he never knew he had. That evening, when Daniel came home, I was waiting in the living room. He froze when he saw me. "You're still awake?" "Yes." My voice trembled. "I went to the hospital today." The color drained from his face. For a moment he looked like a man whose entire world had just collapsed. "I can explain." "You don't have to," I said gently. "I already know about Emily." Silence filled the room. Then Daniel sank into the chair, covering his face with his hands. "I didn't know how to tell you." His voice broke. "I thought you'd leave me." I walked over and sat beside him. "Daniel, she's your daughter." He looked up, eyes red. "I abandoned her before she was even born." "You didn't know." "That doesn't make it better." We sat in silence for a long time. Then I took his hand. "Let's go see her tomorrow." He blinked. "You want to come?" "Of course." The next morning, we walked into Emily's hospital room together. When she saw us, her face lit up. And for the first time since I had followed my husband into the night, everything finally made sense. But none of us knew yet that the biggest twist in this story hadn't happened. 3 weeks later, the doctors called with unexpected news. A treatment trial. Experimental. Dangerous. But with a chance to save Emily's life. And suddenly our secret, broken family had something we hadn't felt in a long time. Hope.